communist.
Oh, yeah. If you were American, you were anti-communist. No question.
The Cold War was a 46-year-long altercation following World War II between the U.S. and their allies and the Soviet Union and their allies. Throughout the entire period, the two superpowers did not face each other in military combat, but did fight in a series of proxy wars as well as participating competitively in other global events such as the Olympics, the space race, and arms race.
We interviewed Carol Brennan, who was born in 1945 and lived throughout the entire Cold War. She was attentive to all the events that surrounded her and her country during this era.
During this 46-year period, America's global focus was on the Soviet Union, not only because of their communism, but also because of a government that was very different from our own. Our relationship with the Soviets could be called rocky at best after World War II. The American public was obviously affected by this conflict, and changes to their daily lives occurred.
So how was your day-to-day life affected by the Cold War?
Well, I lived on an army base most of till I was in college, actually. So we didn't get to build our own bomb shelters and stuff, which a lot of people did, because we thought, nukes could come over at any time. But all of our movies, books we read, things like that, were influenced too by what was happening what we thought was happening. So there were a lot of nuclear disaster movies and stuff that we all saw, whether it was propaganda or not. I don't know. I don't know if Hollywood was working, how it was working, but we all believed, they could bomb us anytime we could, and the missiles would be going like this, and the entire world would be destroyed. That's what we believe.
What's the name?
The effects of America's global interest trickled all the way down to the schools and how the students were taught about Russia and our rivalry with them. Both countries wanted to dominate the other on the fronts of space, education, athletics, etc.
What else were you taught in school about the Russians?
We were taught, actually the actual classes we took were influenced by the whole Russian Cold War thing, because even girls were taught to study math and science, and we were all going to be aeronautical engineers and get to the moon, and we had to beat the Russians and everything. And the Russians were smart and going strong, so it was a race.
With both countries having massive nuclear capabilities and both countries on edge, many believed that nuclear attacks were imminent and would often prepare for those events.
The war lasted like 35 years or something, from 47 to 91. So during that time, I was in a lot of different places. And if I was on an army base for most of that time, then we had shelters on the army base, and you knew where they were. They were marked, so that because we couldn't dig, our own shelters in the backyard and stuff. But off the army bases, I don't know, because people did their own what they had to do. There were buildings built especially to withstand. I don't know whether they would have or not, but yeah, on an army base, we always knew where we had to head.
A significant event in the Cold War that elevated tensions even farther was the Bay of Pigs. The Bay of Pigs was the failed land invasion of Cuba by Cuban exiles who had been trained by the CIA. The event forced Fidel Castro's hand in aligning with Russia, which then resulted in the placement of Russian nuclear missiles in Cuba, our neighbor.
Did you know anyone that was involved in the Bay of Pigs invasion?
I did. I knew several people. I was living in Fort Eustis. I'm an Army brat. My dad was in the Army. And we were stationed at Fort Eustis, which is on the East Coast in Virginia. And the entire base was mobilized immediately as soon as the embargo began and everything. Yeah, the whole base was mobilized, and all the soldiers that we knew were gone. The whole base was just deserted. Just families were there. And everybody was shipped down to Florida, waiting to see what was going to happen, because it was scary. It was really scary for a while.
The man who ordered the Bay of Pigs invasion was John F. Kennedy. After being elected in 1960, he became one of the most active and popular presidents of his generation before his untimely death.
Where were you when JFK was shot?
I was a freshman in college. I was sitting in my car, eating my lunch, listening to the radio, and I think I had a music station on, but it was interrupted. I was, between classes, and it came on, and I was devastated. And I sat there and listened for as long as the news was on, and then I, crying, probably ran up to be with other students and stuff. My German class was just beginning to meet, and Germany. But yeah, we all got together. Everyone was shocked, absolutely horrified, of course. And we didn't know, anything for a while, who did it or anything. So yeah, I remember exactly where I was.
Do you think?
As the Cold War went on, America tried to expand its sphere of influence and stop the spread of communism in Vietnam and Korea. With the focus on Vietnam and Korea, many in the country started to doubt America's motives and their willingness to start unnecessary wars.
And were you against Vietnam and Korea? Both those wars?
I was
How old were
only
you during that?
Yeah, during the Korean War. I was born in 45, so during Korean War started in 50, I think.
Yeah.
So I was only 5, so I probably didn't really have an opinion on that
Yeah.
one. Except my dad was sent over there, and I didn't like that. But Vietnam, I was like in high school and then all the way through college, I think. I mean, that lasted 10 years.
So were you against that?
Maybe not in the beginning, but as it went on, everybody was against it. And yet, if your country called you up, you sort of, if you were an American,
Stepped up.
kind of had to go. Yeah. As the Cold War went on, people were more and more dissatisfied as the wars went on, like the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the war in Afghanistan. As we were fighting Russia in different areas and killing people and being killed, our young men being killed, and the draft was going on, people were getting really dissatisfied with the whole thing. So they were becoming, like the flower children were a little more socialist in their leanings. Maybe not communist, but as far as socialism, which is kind of related to it.
Who were the flower children?
Who were the flower children?
I forgot.
During the 60s, I think, it started. Well, during the Vietnam War is when...
No, we didn't learn about it.
During the Vietnam War, people started getting tired of watching it, because our televisions did show it every single night on television. How many Americans were killed, and we were fighting a war where the enemy looked just like the people we were fighting with. The South Koreans and the Vietnamese looked just like the North, So we were shooting civilians, women and children, and there were some catastrophes going on, and people were getting sick of it because the numbers were atrocious that we were killing and being killed, and people just got real tired of it. People were starting to evade the draft. Soldiers were drafted back then and didn't have a choice. They either went or they went to Canada or Mexico, just left the country because that's the only way they could get out of it. And people were just sick of the war and booing the soldiers when they came home, which was really sad. And people started getting into peaceful demonstrations. Make peace, not war. That's what the hippies did. Well, the hippies and the flower children were the same thing.
Yeah.
But the flower children, there's a lot of good parts of that too. I mean, they were against war. How could that be bad?
Ever since the fall of Soviet Union, tensions between U.S. and Russia have dramatically relaxed. But still today, U.S. and Russia are competitive in athletics, science, and worldwide influence.